Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Alliance Bernstein. Since 2019, employees have impacted our community by giving more than 5,000 hours of volunteerism in Middle Tennessee. AllianceBernstein.com. Alliance Bernstein is not affiliated with National Public Radio.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Today, we hope to expose you to the experience of foster youth in our state. Right now, there are over 8,000 young people in foster care here in Tennessee. These young people do not have the family any one of us would have hoped for, and they often experience the loss of what they knew suddenly and unexpectedly. Being in foster care brings its own challenges, and aging out of foster care brings big ones. Turning 18 and having adult responsibilities, often without a support network, can be tough to navigate. A recent study by Belmont University reports that 4 out of 5 young people who age out of foster care face the tremendous challenges of homelessness, addiction, imprisonment, or mental illness by the age of 21 if they don't receive support. The study also notes that the most important factor can make a difference in these young people's lives is a stable, caring relationship with an adult. That relationship doesn't have to be in a, quote, forever family, but it could be with a social worker, a teacher, a mentor, or a coach. What this tells me, and from my own experience teaching youth in the foster care system, is that by simply giving a damn and showing up consistently, so many of us can make a real difference in the lives of young people here in our state. One person who's working to do that in his role is Ceicys McGill. She experienced foster care herself and now works as a life set specialist with youth villages, where she provides support to 18 and 21-year-olds who have aged out of foster care. Ceicys, we're so grateful to have you here with us today. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Note for listeners, we're going to be speaking with Ceicys and another guest today about their personal experiences. We're going to keep this conversation kind and honest, but we may discuss some topics that could be difficult for some listeners. Ceicys, again, thank you so much for being here. I do want to start off with where you're at right now. Last week, we asked you to share a little bit of one of your days and what you were thinking and feeling. We're going to take a listen to that clip.
It's 1:42 p.m., and now I'm waiting in the school pickup line to pick up my 2 older boys. The best part of today so far, it would have to be hearing from a client how appreciative they are of me. Being in social work, sometimes not everybody is appreciative of the work you do. So when you hear it and you know that you're making a difference, it just is all that much more special. I've been struggling a little bit with just time management, trying to manage being a full-time mom, full-time wife, full-time employee, full-time grad student, but I'm grateful for being alive and being capable of being all those things. There's many people who would kill to be in the position I'm in. Right now, I'm really proud of myself for finishing my first semester of grad school with all A's. That was something I set out to complete for myself, and for me to be able to do that with such a hectic life is great. If I could tell anything to my 15-year-old self, I would have to tell her that everything's going to work out. If my 15-year-old self was here, she'd probably tell me, wow, so this is what life will look like. What I'm really looking forward to right now is probably just spending Christmas with my boys. My husband and I have something very special planned this year, and we're going to take a trip. And the boys don't know yet, so I'm just really looking forward to surprising them, seeing their reaction, and then just getting that quality family time. Well, they're about to come out to the Colorado line, so that's all for now.
All right, you talked about life being hectic. You got a lot on your plate. You're a mom to 4, you're married, you're a full-time grad student, and you work full-time at youth villages.
Yes, it's quite hectic.
That's hectic.
Yeah.
How you pulling that off?
Caffeine and sheer will.
A lot of both, I imagine.
Yes.
Tell us what Youth Villages is and what your day-to-day job is like.
Okay, Youth Villages is a nonprofit. We have several locations across several states. My particular job kind of varies day to day. I get to make my own schedule based on, what's available to my clients. So I meet them where they are. Sometimes I'm in court all day. Sometimes I'm in meetings like Foster Care Review Board or CFTMs, which is Child Family Team meetings. But most of the time I'm spending my day with the youth and spending session time with them, talking with them, helping them learn independent living skills.
What is your job so far? What has that taught you about what the youth in the foster care system are going through generally?
A lot. I've been out of the system for several years, and I see that these kids are still going through the same things that I went through aging out. So still facing homelessness, still facing challenges with mental health issues, still needing supports.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're not that much older than them.
No, not really.
Wow.
Yeah.
That says something. Now, I do want to talk about your personal story. You entered foster care initially when you were in 7th grade, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So if you're comfortable, can you just tell us a little bit how you ended up in Nashville with your brother and how you both ended up in foster care briefly?
Yeah, got you. So I lived with my biological dad, and after some abuse, he dropped me and my brother off in Tennessee and Lebanon with my biological mother. There was some abuse there, and then CPS was called, and they took me and my brother into custody, and we made our way up this way.
Made your way up this way. Were you both able to stay together while you were under foster care?
At first, no, but then eventually we were placed together, and we was able to stay together until I was put back in the system.
Now, I understand that you didn't really realize that you were being placed in a pre-adoptive home. You were with a woman in her 60s. What happened when you were taken to her home? What kind of information was given to you about what was happening, and most importantly, what was expected of you and your brother?
I really wasn't given a whole lot of information. Typically, when we first went in there, she gave us a tour of the house. The caseworker was just kind of trying to give a brief overview of us and of her. And then other than that, we were shown our room, and that was pretty much it. Gradually, we was able to be told, chores and things like that that's expected of us. But other than that, we really didn't get a lot of information.
What was that like the first night you were trying to sleep there? Were you able to sleep?
No, it was scary. I knew they wouldn't have placed us somewhere unsafe, or so I'd hoped.
Mm-hmm.
But it was scary. You just didn't know. It was a new place. You didn't know the people that was in the house because there was 2 other children. It was just, yeah.
What was your initial relationship with Evan like?
I was really hard to trust somebody, so it took a long time for me to warm to her. But then it kind of gradually declined, just naturally.
Declined? How?
We didn't really have a great relationship. She was, I feel like, not in it for the right reasons. And there was just a lot of conflict. I feel like a lot of it had to do with how old she was and then dealing with a teenager. And yeah.
You said something. Sorry, everyone. You said something that just rung out to me. In my past, I was a teacher in Los Angeles, and I taught kids who basically got kicked out of high school, and a good number of them were in the foster care system. That's something that they would say a lot. The people who were their charge, their foster parents, so to speak, they said they weren't in it for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something common that you come across when you're talking, when you're not only from your experience, but when you're working with the kids you're working with now?
Yes, but I feel like it depends on the agency in which the foster parents are working for, if I'm being honest. But a lot of times, yes, I see that.
While you were there with Evelyn, you and your brother were interviewed by different families.
Correct.
What was that experience like?
It was like waking up on Christmas to realize that there was no presents. Yeah.
Expand a little bit more.
So we went through a lot of different potential adoptive families, and me and my brother were a package deal is what they would call us. And my brother had a lot of challenges, and by the end of the trial, they wouldn't want my brother, and so therefore I was unable to be adopted by that family.
How did that make your brother feel?
It made him spiral out more, a lot more anger and behavioral issues.
Between the two, did you both talk about it during that time, what you were both going through? These package deal meetings constantly?
Yes and no. We were still kind of young and didn't really understand the process. So, yeah, we just kind of went through it.
Tell me this. What do you want families who are talking with foster care youth to know about how to make the experience as easy as possible for these kids who, like you and your brother, going into a situation after dealing with trauma and abuse? You're going into a situation where your trust for, I think, not just adults, but anyone is not very high.
Right.
And then you have these, you said Christmas Day, no presence, constant emotional roller coaster of up and down, getting your hopes ready. What do you want folks to know about what it's like to go through that?
I just really think it's important to know that you don't have to have solutions. That's not what a lot of us are looking for. We're just looking for support, someone to listen, someone to guide us, not necessarily say, hey, I got all the answers, because you don't. Every child's experience is different and unique to themselves. So no one can really truly understand what these kids are going through. So just being there for them, being open.
Now, I understand Evelyn offered to adopt you and your brother.
Yes.
What did you think about that?
I didn't really want to go through with it. I was very hesitant just because of how old she was and our tumultuous relationship. But I knew that chances would decline because of my brother.
Did she have a tumultuous relationship with your brother?
Not in the beginning, no.
Okay. But after disappointment.
Yeah.
What happened? Was she able to adopt you both?
Yes. So she, after several failed adoptions, she ended up offering to adopt us because we had like this hiatus where no one was offering. And so I knew that my brother was not likely to be wanted, essentially. And so I figured this was our last resort. And instead of being moved to another foster home, I figured it was just best to go ahead and be stable.
It sounds to me like you didn't want to do it, but you did this for your brother because it was so important to him.
Right. Yes.
How old were you at this time?
13.
13 years old. How old was your brother?
He was 12.
Okay. You were in school.
Yes.
What was that? What was going on there during this time?
I've always been really good in school. I used school as an escape. It was somewhere I felt safe and I knew what was expected of me. So it was easy. I excelled in school. So
school was a safe haven.
Yes.
Yeah. I understand you experienced something there that really changed your life. Can you tell us what happened there when you were in school?
Yes. So as my relationship with Evelyn at the time just kept declining, my mental health started to decline. And I would report some things that were happening, but I was not believed. So then eventually I felt like it was best to take my life in 2013. Obviously and gratefully, it was a failed attempt, but it was definitely a turning point in my life.
Who helped you out during that time?
If I'm being honest, no one. I kind of went through it myself. Leaned on, I guess, a couple of friends from high school, but really I just kind of went through it myself.
How did you pull yourself out of that?
One day at a time. That's what I kept telling myself, counting down till 18. You're
a kid, teenager, pulling yourself through. Do you feel like you were able to have a youth? I mean, I'm just referring back to listening to this clip of you about to pick up your two oldest boys, and I'm hearing kids, elementary school, after school, playing. These kids, and some of them are able to have childhoods. It feels to me like you were robbed of yours.
Yes, I had to grow up really fast, to say the least.
How do you, seeing that, now being a mom to 4, what are you planning? What are your plans? What are your hopes and dreams for your boys?
I always tell people that I never had a good example of what to do as parents, but I had great examples of what not to do as a parent. So really just my hopes and dreams is to cause as minimal trauma to my children as possible.
Yeah.
Just make sure they feel loved every second of every day and hope they can thrive in life without having to compare to what not to do.
Now, I understand you ended up in placement with a foster parent, Kay, who was from Youth Villages, not DCS. And from there, you were connected with the Life Villages program. Tell me about the experience. Tell me about Kay.
Yes. So Kay was kind of a buoy in the ocean. She was there to kind of help ground me and like keep me afloat. When I entered back into services, I was 17 and pregnant. So really for her, she just connected me with Youth Villages Life Set program, and they were able to help me apply for colleges and apply for my first apartment, and they just really helped me get on my feet.
You're 17, you're pregnant, knowing that at 18 you're going to begin to age out of foster care. Were you nervous? How did you handle that? How did you handle walking into your life? And people say adult life. Look, my philosophy is you're not an adult when you're 18.
Oh, for sure.
It takes 26, 25, 26.
Yes.
But, you have these adult responsibilities thrust upon you.
Right.
And you're an expecting mom.
Right. It was terrifying. I had been told, because I was still in high school at that point. I did graduate, but I was told that, you're going to end up like your parents and you're not going to be able to get far now that you have a baby. But I had some support through Kay and through my life set specialist that really just kind of helped push me. I definitely wasn't prepared, even with supports, but they were able to be there to help guide me. And I don't know what I would have done without that support.
Mm-hmm. What was your relationship with your soon-to-be expecting child's father like?
Oh, it was good. We've been together 11 years. So
11 years.
Yeah.
You two are in this together.
Yes.
Huh? That's wonderful. When you look back, what helped you find and stay on this path that you've been on? It's because a lot with experience with or without in foster care system, they don't understand how someone can go through this and have this really full life that you're having. I mean, you're busier than me. You're super busy out here and you're living life. What helped you really stay this path?
So I was in the Life Set program, like I stated. Normally it's a 9-month program, but I was also a Youth Villages scholar. So she was able to stay with me the full 4 years of college. Mm-hmm. She got me through it. And then my senior year of college, I completely switched gears of what I was intentionally going to school for. And I looked at my life and I was like, if someone could do this for me, I could do this for someone else. And that's really what kept me down this path, led me to this job.
What were you thinking about doing when you were in college?
I wanted to be a forensic psychologist.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Then you switched over to this type of work.
Yes.
What about your experience made you decide to dedicate your life to young people who have gone through something similar?
Well, like I said, my life set specialist stayed with me, and on graduation day, her and my mentor at the time showed up to my graduation. That was besides he was my husband at that time. Besides him, that was it that showed up for me. Mm-hmm. And I had 2 kids, and, I didn't expect to graduate with a bachelor's degree with 2 kids. So I was like, well, this is really important. She really made a difference, and I wanted to be that because I've been through it. So I kind of have an idea, and I feel like I have that edge on some people that haven't been through that system and know what it's like to age out of foster care.
How's your relationship? Are the young people you're working with knowing your story? How much of your story do you share with them?
So I don't share a whole lot. I do let them know that I've been through the system. I feel like that's a key point to build rapport with my young adults, to let them know, hey, I'm not just someone here to check a box and pretend like I know everything. I may have some understanding that someone else may not have. But I don't delve into, obviously, the details. But I think that helps build that trust with them. Yeah,
and that trust takes a long time.
Yes.
What would you recommend? We're going to go to break after this, but I do want you to answer this. What if I have a listener, someone is listening out there, and they may know a young person either through their job, they may be an educator, or in their neighborhood simply, who's kind of going through some things. How would you recommend a person approaching that kid to see if they can help?
Start with a conversation, something small. Don't bombard them. Just start small. Build that rapport. Sometimes a conversation is all it takes to save somebody.
We're going to talk more about this later on in the show with you. Sahar, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Sahar McGill has personal experience in the foster care system, and she's working with Youth Villages as a life set specialist. She's going to join us later on this hour. Right now, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll speak with another young person who navigated state custody and the foster care system in Tennessee, and we're going to learn about his experience. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Today, we're speaking with 2 Nashvillians who personally have experience being in and aging out of the foster care system here in Tennessee. Joining us now to share his story is Tristan Slough. He is He recently finished his graduate degree from Columbia University and currently works as a student resource coordinator at the Tennessee Higher Education Initiative, also known as THEI. He's providing resources for students in the prison system who are working toward college degrees. Tristan, really grateful to have you here with us. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Now, you're currently working for the Tennessee Higher Education Initiative. Tell us what you do there and what that work means to you.
Got you. So this work is very special to me. I think I've just come out of half a decade of school, and seeing people who are in the prison systems that are looking to do some of the same things that I was doing and achieve some of the same goals that I do is very meaningful and very profoundly impactful on my life and how I view the world. I'm glad to have the opportunity to support them, and I do that through the creation of resources, and resources meaning guides, manuals, brochures, college maps, degree maps, pretty much like anything that the typical, I'm doing that, y'all can't see me, with quotation marks, the typical student would have to help guide them as they navigate college, but contextualized to a prison setting where the rules are different, the accesses are different, the ability to engage with the college system is different. So taking all of the things that all of us that were college educated had to support us, all of the physical materials, and recreating them in a way that they're directly applicable to somebody who's trying to do the same thing, but within a prison setting. It's a 2-year grant, and we're just now finishing up the first round of resources, which I'm super excited about. We'll start to disseminate those across the state, get some feedback from students within Tennessee, and then take that feedback as we move forward and create more resources and disseminate them across the nation.
I'm going to ask a pretty cliche question right now. What's the best and worst part of your jobs?
I think maybe the worst part is seeing how there is such a big need that has never adequately been addressed before. We're seeing things that like should not be a problem. It should not be this hard to navigate college, something that is, for all intents and purposes, a tool to better your life from the people that need it the most, maybe. And it's incredibly frustrating to see how inadequately served a lot of these people are as they try to navigate this. I think the best part is twofold, like seeing the results of that. In one hand, we see the results when we start speaking with alumni from our educational programming and seeing how much this could have meant to them, but also seeing at times, it's been 3 already that I've been able to attend graduations from students within the prison system, where the graduation is completely contained within prison. Everybody comes inside. All of the all of the executive officers from the schools, the college presidents, families, friends, they come into the prison, and we're able to celebrate our colleagues there. Now, the colleagues that we're celebrating, the students that we're celebrating, did not have the support that we're trying to create. They had other means of support through THEI, which were hugely impactful, but they didn't have some of the physical documents that future students will have. But it's nice to see that even without the work that we're doing, people have still managed. And it's nice to know that moving forward, these same groups of people that we're seeing manage despite all of these challenges will have it maybe a little bit easier. College isn't easy, prison isn't easy. That intersection is especially difficult, but it won't be quite as difficult if they can access these documents that we're creating for them.
You're doing special things out there.
I think so. And I try to be humble, and I try to recognize that it's not about me or the work I'm doing, but it's pretty clear that we're doing something that nobody else has been able to do, at least not to this extent, and we're going to be changing a lot of lives in the next few years. Way beyond what we'll be able to personally see.
All right, so last week we asked you to share a few moments of one of your days and tell us what you were thinking and feeling. Let's listen to that.
Right now, I'm in my apartment. I'm working from home today. I have Hope, who is a pit bull that I'm dog watching. I'm feeling okay today. The best part of the day so far has been chilling with Hope. She's a very nervous dog, and being able to work with her over the past few days and seeing her get more comfortable has been great. I'm grateful for a lot of things. I'm grateful for the community that I've been building, family members and friends who have been supportive throughout this journey, and who, like, as I am becoming an adult, and have been a huge part of that and why it's been successful. I'm grateful for those relationships. I'm really proud of myself for a lot of things. This year, like, I've gotten a master's degree. I'm working at a job that I'm proud to work at. I'm able to financially support myself and help some people out. It feels like I'm becoming an adult and I'm becoming a successful adult, and I'm really proud of myself for that. If I could tell anything to my 15-year-old self, I'd probably say, like, you don't have to make it so hard for yourself. You don't have to, like, die on every hill. You can just pick your battles and do what's right because it's the right thing to do. And just, like, try to promote healing more. If my 15-year-old self was here now, what do I think he'd tell me to do? I don't know, probably something stupid. I was very angry and hurt at 15, but I was still a smart kid. Maybe he would have a better idea. I think I'm looking forward to just spending some time with friends and family around Christmas. My family's Mexican and we have a tradition of making tamales. I will make like literally hundreds of them, and I think that'll be fun to do. It won't be with a lot of family members. It'll be more like friends, and I'll be leading it as opposed to just being one of the helpers like I was when I was a kid. So I'm really looking forward to just seeing how that turns out. I'm gonna head out now to get I'm getting lunch. I gotta go pick it up. It's been a good day today, and I'm just looking forward to seeing how it ends.
I'm interested in the conversation you have or are having with your 15-year-old self. You said that your 15-year-old self was a smart kid, might not get it, but he might tell you something that you hadn't thought of. What advice would your 15-year-old self have for you right now?
When I think about that, I think like, and it's not something that I lost, but something that I no longer need was this like drive to defend myself. And like, you always got to look out for yourself. Like, you can't trust these people. You got to make sure that you're good and that nobody else that you can depend upon is going to be able to step in. And I think for the longest that did serve me, I wasn't surrounded by people that I couldn't trust, but I was just unable to see what they really thought and what their intentions really were. A lot of the times I was healing from things that I hadn't even, I think at 15, shared with most people, and my worldview was skewed, and being around people who maybe had the best intentions but weren't able to break through and let me see that led me to believe like I needed that guard. And I think it did serve me, because even with people who meant well, there was a lot of people who didn't. And even with people who, regardless of how they meant, were dealing with their own trauma and their own need to heal, it oftentimes their actions can cause harm. So I think for the longest I did need to defend myself. I think as I've become an adult and I've exercised control in who I allow into my life and who I choose to build a life with, I might not need that quite as much, but it is important to recognize that the work I'm doing is hard, and the people that I'm working with, whether or not they have good intentions, oftentimes have difficult histories and wounds and trauma that they're healing from. And so I have to be mindful of the fact that this work will take a lot from me. And even if I don't need to be on guard, high tension all the time, I do need to be mindful to protect myself. It's very easy as an advocate to give and give and give and allow people to get what they need from you until you feel so overworked and overextended, and there's just no boundaries to keep you safe. So maybe that is something that I do need to remind myself. I'm no longer unsafe like I was when I was a child, but there are still dangers to not being mindful of my own well-being. And it's really easy to fall into that trap when you're doing the right thing. It's just sometimes you're doing too much of the right thing for others and not keeping in mind of what's best for yourself.
So you're learning how to take care of yourself and others.
And take care of myself in order to be able to take care of others. Because if I give too much, then I'm not in a position to give anything to anybody.
Yes, sir. I know exactly what that's like. Now, I understand your life really changed when you were 14. You got arrested. Up until that point, tell me something. What was your life then? And tell me what was your family like too?
I think it's kind of a complicated question. I think I was a very smart kid that wanted to do good, but I couldn't get past my own pain and my own trauma. And it seemed like every major opportunity I had to heal, I didn't have the knowledge or the resources to do so, and I chose to cause harm. I was lashing out at others. I was recreating the harm that had been done to me, and it was to the detriment of my family and my community. And I think that it was what I knew at the time. I didn't have the skills to do otherwise, so I have to extend myself grace, but it does hurt to think about the type of things that I was doing, the way that I was treating others. I was just a hurt person that was hurting others, but recognizing now that that didn't get us anywhere except in a place where we were just unable to heal together. which led to arrest. The arrest kind of culminated in a longer history of lashing out at others, but I think that was the intervention that got me into state's custody eventually, and it got me into a space to where I was kind of forced to reflect and examine on myself and recognize how hurt I was, and also recognize like my family. I think I shifted a lot of blame to them, my mother and my siblings. That was not fair on their part. But we were just doing the best that we could, and they didn't know necessarily how to help me or how to even communicate in ways, and I didn't know how to let them know that either. We were doing the best that we could, but we did not have the tools we need to adequately address our struggles, and to this day.
You're saying something right there.
Mm-hmm.
Your family did the best that they could. You were doing the best that you could. There's certain pieces of knowledge that none of you had, and also the resources. Are you finding that in the work that you're doing? You're 27 right now, right?
25.
25. So you're 25 right now. You've been doing this work. You've been working with folks who are incarcerated from your own experience, even though people may get it wrong. Do you feel like folks are doing the best that they can?
I believe so. I believe that it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that everybody is operating with the tools that they're given, and those tools aren't the same ones that you have. Even something that it might be 100% true and logical and well-intentioned on your end, it won't mean the same thing to somebody else. They're operating under a whole different rule book. And if you just chastise or punish them for operating and a lot of times coming to the sound, logical decisions in their own mind, you never get anywhere. You lose the ability to communicate. You lose the ability to support. All that's left is judgment and blaming, and then nobody gets anywhere except more polarized and more at odds with the people that they could probably benefit the most from.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. Today we're talking with young adults who grew up in the foster care system, and we're learning about their experiences. Now, Tristan, you went to Mountain View, a youth development center. What was the day-to-day like there?
It was interesting. Mountain View was one of the more restrictive hardware secure settings within the juvenile justice foster care landscape. And I think it's important, I'm glad we are talking about this, because there is a lot of overlap between young adults who enter the juvenile justice hardware secure side of things that eventually find their way into foster care.
Okay, break down hardware secure real quick.
Hardware secure, the most simple way that I can put it is jail type settings. The doors are locked. When you leave, you're in shackles. You wear the jail uniform. There's guards. There's barbed wire on the fences. That type of placement. And you wouldn't typically, I think of kids in foster care in that setting. You would think of like, oh, well, they committed a crime. And while that is true, there is a lot of overlap. A lot of those kids in those settings started off in foster care, or they ended up there once they left those settings because the communities they were returning to weren't a viable option for them, and they had to find another way to exercise permanency and to work towards reentry into a community, even if it's not necessarily the one that they were lifted from at first.
Okay. So you're there. How did that environment help you?
I think that environment in and of itself has the potential to cause a lot of harm, and it did, just straight up. But I also think that for people that are in a self-destructive pathway, they need to sometimes be forced to recognize and acknowledge the harm that they're doing to others. And if they're in an environment where there is no accountability, that can never happen. Now, whether or not Mountain View is the appropriate type of accountability is a conversation in of itself. But for me, it was that accountability. I was forced to recognize the harm that I had committed and was continuing to commit through an environment that was reflective of that harm, but then redirected towards me. I did learn a lot there. I had two great therapists while I was there that were instrumental in my, not just my healing, but recognizing the need and starting the process to heal, which I'm still undergoing today. I met good people, whether they be staff or teachers or church volunteers, that have been important in my life since then. So I think it was a mixed bag. You don't enter that type of setting and leave unscathed, but there are opportunities to take parts of what you learn or experience and apply them towards building a better future for yourself.
You entered foster care. What was that like?
That was, it was almost like the reverse of many people's experience with foster care. I was in the juvenile justice side, and as I worked towards healing, completing the types of programs that were designed to hold me accountable, it became clear that, I wasn't ready to go home yet. There was things going on my end, on my family's end. It wasn't, it wasn't there yet. So we needed an alternative, what is called the step down process, where you go from a more restrictive hardware secure setting to a less restrictive, more maybe therapy or community-based programming. And I kind of worked my way down to a group home and then from there to a foster home, so that by the time I was getting ready to age out of the foster care system, I was in that placement and not in a hardware secure placement.
Not everyone goes to college.
Mm-hmm.
And getting to the college, for anyone, it requires overcoming some hurdles. You had a tremendous amount that you have just detailed for us. How did you know college was something that you wanted? And briefly tell me how you made it happen.
Well, I think that's, again, a loaded question. I think something that I will recognize, I will defend my family to my dying day. They wanted the best for me, and they instilled into me the best parts of myself. One of those things was a recognition of the power of education and the drive to pursue it. College was a given from the time I was a child. My mom always made it clear that, our behavior might not be on point, but our grades better be.
Okay.
And we were always taking school seriously. We were always working towards that eventuality. It felt like for a few years, that was no longer reality. Like I couldn't afford to think about when I was 18. I was trying to survive being 15 in Mountain View. But there was also that kind of, I don't want to say light at the end of the tunnel. I'm sure there's a more appropriate metaphor, but there was also that understanding that at some point, whenever I freed myself from this derailment and got back on track, that was the end goal. Now, that was just the general rules we lived by. It became more applicable to me as I got older, and I started to value the ability to help others, and I felt a calling to help other kids that were in a position that I was in. It became clear that I wanted to do something with social work, psychology, counseling, something in that field. And in order to get those skills and learn how to apply my life experiences with newfound expertise, education was key, and I did need to go to college for that.
Tristan Slow currently helps provide resources to people in Tennessee's prison system who are working towards their college degrees through the Tennessee Higher Education Initiative. Tristan, you can hang with us through the break?
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to talk with him and Sahar after the break. So stay with us. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Kulona, and this is Nashville. Today, we're talking with two young Tennesseans who experienced foster care and aged out of the foster care system. They've both gone on to dedicate themselves to helping others. Sahar McGill is currently with Youth Villages LifeSet. She's a specialist there. And Tristan Slough works for the Tennessee Higher Education Initiative. I got to say this, both of you, extraordinary. Extraordinary for what you're able to do. I have experience working with young people, again, like I said, who have been through the foster care system, and now they're adults many years older than you. And a lot of what you shared, I have heard and talked to in our private conversations. But it's something that a lot of people don't really recognize and understand, if they even think of the foster care system and the human beings who are in there, not just the human beings who are being served by the system, but the human beings who are working in the system. The only times we hear about it is if DCS has a shortage of staff members, or as we heard last year and some parts of this year, stories about kids sleeping in DCS offices because there wasn't enough places to place them. I want to ask you both about the people who worked with you. Do you feel like there was one person, one relationship, one moment that was really special that made a difference for both of you? Sahar?
Yeah, my last foster parent, Kay, through Youth Villages, she was wonderful. I was her second foster kid ever and her last. And she took me in with a baby, no questions asked. She just really walked me through what adulthood would look like.
Are you still in touch with her?
I am.
Yeah. So that's developed into a lifelong friendship.
Yes.
Tristan, you have something similar?
I don't know that it was one moment, but a process of working with people, some of my case managers and my magistrate. And when I was getting ready to turn 17 and when I was recognizing, in my own life that maybe I wasn't going home and I needed to start planning for independence, seeing the shift in mindset, because for DCS, a lot of times, rightfully, the goal is reunification. And when you have a family like mine that is actively involved at every step and is more than willing to take you in when the time is right, it's hard to recognize that maybe the time will never be right and we got to plan for that. And so when I was getting ready to turn 17, when I had already been advocating for myself that like, I need to stop working towards going home, I need to start working towards college and independence, and then kind of seeing over the process of however many weeks or months, them start to recognize like, all right, well, you know what, maybe he has a point. And then not just recognize that, but then support me in that decision, kind of letting go of their ideal, which is usually the ideal in most cases, and recognizing that in my circumstances, we needed something different, and then actively supporting me and backing me in that shift. I think that it was validating in that I knew things about myself and I could advocate for myself, but also that these people care about me and what's best for me, and not just what sounds best on paper in a report. So I think that meant a lot. It didn't make things easier in a sense. I mean, it made things easier. It didn't make things easy. College is still difficult regardless of how you're planning for it, but it felt like I wasn't having to convince other people the value or merit of my ideas. They were supporting me in doing so.
Now that you're both young adults with careers, there you've decided to help other people. You both kind of implied that, through what you've experienced growing up, you have wounds that you're still healing. You have trauma and harm that you're still healing. Yet you've both decided to dedicate yourselves to working with folks who have been through similar situations. Do you feel like your work is helping you to heal a little bit through helping others?
Yes. Short answer, yes.
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 Okay. Tristan.
I think absolutely. I think there's a danger in this work of re-traumatizing yourself, but there's also an incredibly powerful healing factor of seeing your pain being put to use, and you can sometimes make peace with things that on your own, talking with a therapist, you might not ever be able to actually put behind you. But once you see okay, I've broken that cycle, somebody else is now living a different life than what I had to go through, that is a healing and cathartic. And sometimes it's moments, sometimes it's just reflecting in the past, but it can be absolutely healing.
For any young person who's listening who may think that, hey, they'll never end up in foster care, but one day they may find themselves there. Tristan, what do you want to say to them?
Well, first I want to say that it's important to recognize you are a kid, and it can be easy to feel like you're being blamed or to blame yourself for circumstances that are way out of your control. It is not your fault that you have these unfortunate circumstances, and you deserve better. I think it's really easy for us to lose sight of that, and I want that to be made known. Second of all, I would say utilize any and every resource you can. Even if it doesn't sound like something you want to hear at the moment, even if it doesn't sound like something that makes any sense, if there's even the slight possibility of you benefiting from it, do it, because you never know what will be useful later. The same thing with people. If you have people that you trust and you have people that you think legitimately think are operating with your best interest in heart, keep them close as you can. Utilize that relationship. Be honest, be open, maintain that, even when it's really hard to do so. And it feels like maybe you can't trust or maybe they won't understand, you're never going to have too many good people in your life. And if you find them, keep them close.
Zahar.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. And I also want to let everybody know that foster care is scary, but there are foster parents out there that do have good intentions, that are in it for the right reasons. And it's okay to slowly open up to those foster parents. And like he said, kind of lean on those supports as they're there. Support is really important to kind of get, even as someone who wouldn't be in the system, support is important. Having that connection with another human is just so important.
From what I understand of the foster care system, do you think it'd be wise for a young person who's entering into a foster household to have questions of their own for their foster parents? Because as you both have said, sometimes people aren't in it for the right reasons. Is that, I mean, they say when you're applying for a job, you should have some questions for the potential place that may be hiring you. Do you think that it'd be wise for that, for young people entering into foster care?
I think it's a complicated question. And I think when you speak to the point of people that aren't in it for the right reasons, for some people that is exactly the case. For a lot of people, they genuinely think they're in it for the right reason, and they think that they're maybe there to save the child, or maybe they're to offer the child guidance. But people are people, and some of them just naturally get along with, and some of them don't. When you're coming in an environment where two very different people are essentially forced to interact as if like they're family when they're really not, it can be difficult. And children should absolutely have questions and be mindful and exercise any authority, any agency and autonomy that they can. And their workers should recognize that just because these people are here to help does not always mean that they know how to, and they can learn how to by learning more about this child. There are adequate, I don't know that there will ever be adequate trainings. Lots of agencies do provide trainings, but those trainings should be applicable to individualized circumstances when children not only ask questions, but they're allowed to voice concerns. They're allowed to speak about themselves and get to know the people that they're being forced, that's a hard word, but forced to live with.
Mm-hmm. Do you see yourselves, you're doing this work now as young adults, where do you see yourselves in 20 years from now?
I don't think that far. Like, I'm trying to think of it like the next 2, 3, 4 years. I do know that if I make it to 20 years and I'm still involved in this work, I would like to have been able to reflect back on key policies, whether it be at the state, local, or national level that I directly influenced. And I would like to see people that are involved in the work that I, at some point in their journeys, was able to influence them to support them in whatever their goals are.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that far ahead.
Okay.
As a parent, you kind of got to. But honestly, I want to be face-to-face in the field, working with these young adults for as long as possible. But I do have aspirations to maybe, once I'm older, to maybe start a private practice working specifically with youth aging out of foster care.
Mm-hmm. Would either one of you want to be a foster parent?
I think being a foster parent is maybe one of the most impactful things that you can do for these young adults and these youth and children. I think it requires a lot of healing, of learning, of sacrifice, and of stepping outside of yourself for what is in the best interest of the children. I don't know that I can say that that is something that I'm qualified to do now, but I have a lot of growing to do, and maybe if you ask me that same question in a few years, the answer may be different.
Yeah. Perhaps we will have you back on the show to ask you those questions. I do want to talk briefly about, the politics of all this, as you look into it, as you look at Tennessee. And, we talk about DCS, and a lot of the issues that DCS is going through is in the news. When you see this, what type of policies do you all want to see the state legislature get into in a month when the legislative session opens up?
I know he's more into policies than I am, but specifically for me, what I would love to see is a lot more funding towards housing for these young adults aging out, because that's the biggest need. And then maybe something along the lines of transportation, because transportation, you need to get around, and that's not always easy for our young adults.
I got a minute, Tristan.
Absolutely funding. Money talks, and I think that we have a lot of people who have the human aspect without the resources to adequately apply that. So absolutely more funding dedicated to foster care in housing, as Sahar said, and in mass transit. And I think also so things like the foster youth Bill of Rights, things like adequate protections that allow for foster youth to hold other people in their lives accountable towards their best interest, and protections to ensure that these rights are being respected and that youth have more of a say in their lives than they currently do.
A big thing you both said, youth having more of a say, people sitting down and actually listening to them. Not hard to do, but it's desperately needed, huh?
Yes,
it is hard to do. I will say that, but it is incredibly important to do. It's maybe one of the most difficult things we can do as a society is listen to each other, but it's necessary to any type of change that we want to see.
Wise words, wise words. Sahar McGill is currently a youth Village's Life Set Specialist, and Tristan Slough works for the Tennessee Higher Education Initiative. Super happy and honored to have you both on the show to talk with you. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
And a note for listeners, both of our guests receive support from Youth Villages, and there are several organizations and programs that offer foster youth support here in Tennessee. If you're interested in becoming a foster parent or getting involved with foster youth, you can find information through the Tennessee Department of Child Services. We'll also post information on today's web post at thisisnashville.org. Thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Katherine Ceicys. It was directed by Mary Mancini. Our technical director and board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. Special thanks to Morgan Wamsley. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation does not end here. Comment and tweet us and tell us what you want to hear from the show by filling us a message on at thisisnashville.org. You can hit us up on Blue Sky, Instagram, and for the time being, X. I don't think we're ever going to leave X. They keep having me say that, but I think we're staying. You can call us 615-751-2500. This is Nashville. I'm Khalil Lake Alona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.